Okay, so I'm still playing around with the content here, with how to say what I want to say, with how long the video should be. So I'm going to bear with myself and anybody who's the current or future audience. I'm going to ask you to bear with me as well. So what I'm going to try to do is focus on subjects so that the videos are a bit shorter and that people can pick and choose what speaks to them. And today's video, I want to talk about tethering, what I call tethering. And that is the belief that you can tether yourself and other people can tether you to your reality and to the things that you're trying to evolve out of. Um, the phrase that always comes to mind when I analyze this subject is that even Jesus couldn't be successful in his hometown, and that tethering is the same as limiting beliefs. But in this case, the tethering isn't necessarily your personal limiting beliefs. It's the limiting beliefs of the people in your life, the people from your past that have known you, maybe your whole life, or a version of you in a place where you lived at a time in your life, maybe that you were suffering or in need or in lack, and that's the way they know you. And therefore, their vision and beliefs about you are tethering you to the place that you are. You can imagine it that you're in a hot air balloon. And when you're not seeking change or growth, your balloon is on the ground, it's deflated, you're chilling in the basket, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But once you try to begin to elevate and let go of everything around you, right? You're going up into the void and you are distancing yourself from your job, your relationship, your home, your city, whatever it is. As you become distant from that and rise, what holds you back are the people around you. And it's not that they're trying to keep you from changing, it's that they are experiencing their own reality with you in it. And in that, their beliefs about you, their impression about you is tethering you to the ground. And you're in the hot air balloon and they're holding a rope. Maybe you're a parade balloon, or I say a hot air balloon because it's easier to imagine in a hot air balloon that there's a limited audience holding you back. And recently I was having a meditation or prayer or conversation with God, or however you define it to yourself. And in that, I received the knowing and this vision of the power that I have as an individual. And not to say you don't have it and others don't have it, but about me, that I'm quite powerful. And that the Creator or God will cut the rope that's tethering me back. And I'm so powerful that I will grab both ends of the rope and tie it back together and retether myself to that anchor. And that anchor can be a person, it can be a belief, it can be a fear, but specifically in this video, I'm talking about people tethering. And I kept retying these ropes, even ones that I would cut or untie from my balloon. And then eventually I would reach down for the rope and tie it back to my balloon or my basket. And it's a limiting practice. It's a self-limiting practice, and it's a practice limiting you from becoming the best version of yourself, the highest version of yourself that you can possibly be or that you can imagine being. So when you're tethered to that person, they see you in such a way, they believe you can only be X, Y, and Z. They believe that you're only so intelligent or you're only so talented. And this can go especially for family. If your family doesn't really believe you, that you can do anything you set your mind to, and that you're intelligent and you're beautiful and you're capable, then those are the strongest tethers that exist in our lives, because they're the longest lasting. And you can think of a tether as, it starts as a string. Um, that you can just meet somebody recently and they really only have a string. But the more time you spend with them and the more activity you have with them and the more energetic exchange, it keeps adding more strings and more strings until it's, until it's a yarn, and then until it's a rope, and then until it's one of those big towing ropes. And as it is your family that have the biggest towing ropes tethering you to the ground. And it is unfortunate that often in life, those people who want to ascend the highest have to unweave those tethers. And sometimes you can unweave it to a point that it is just a string, something that doesn't hold you back much, or if at all. But the reality is that most of the time, the people holding the tether have remained in fear. They have remained in their old loops, in their old cycles. It could be, family tradition, or it could be narcissistic abuse. It could be a lot of things. And it's unfortunate that a lot of times, in order for you to ascend, that is the tether that has to be broken. That is the bond that has to be released. And if you have a family that respects you, it doesn't have to be done in a violent way. It doesn't have to be a total loss, but that's really not often the case. That the more you ascend, the more that those people in their loops not only tether you, but begin to try to pull you back, especially if you have a narcissistic parent or sibling, that they won't let you be free. They won't just let you ascend. They won't let you go. They won't accept things the way that they are. And specifically, if it's a narcissistic parent, because a narcissist doesn't want peace in the relationship. They would rather argue and fight and have negative energy exchange with you than to just let everything be calm and in peace. And very much a narcissist that has caused trauma and pain to you or abused you is not going to address that. So there's never going to be any healing there. And so that their tether is so strong, and then they're pulling it down, and that's when they really become an anchor. A tether is something that can be lengthened. It is something that can be cut. But an anchor tends to be, the hardest one to surrender, the hardest one to let go of, because an anchor, right, is quite vital for a ship. A ship needs an anchor. And so even as those of us who are working and doing the shadow work and surrendering all of the things that were around us, and we're floating up and we're ascending and going to a higher place and meeting our highest frequency, and learning who our highest self is, we can even be drawn back into that fear of the anchor. And those relationships often look like, you message out of obligation on holidays, birthdays, things like that, back to your anchor, so that your anchor doesn't create chaos. Especially again with a narcissist, that your belief is that they won't create victimization of themselves as long as you kind of do these basic things. And let me tell you from personal experience, that isn't true. They are going to still victimize themselves to your behavior. So those anchors can be quite dangerous. And for those of us working on ascension, it can be really hard to separate from that anchor. But the tethers often will begin to resurface as you ascend higher. So by that I mean people from the past will come back and try to tether themselves back to you. And in some cases, they've been gone a long time and you can reintroduce yourself that you're a new person. But the reality for me is that when you're in this ascension phase or in the void between what you were experiencing before and where you're headed, what you're about to begin experiencing, you can't introduce yourself again because the new hasn't settled and you are sure in your faith and in what you believe is coming. But to explain to them in the 3D how you are or who you are only becomes a tether. It only becomes a tie to whatever you say is happening. Now, you can say wherever you're ascending to, you can say, I'm this and I'm that and blah, blah, blah. But if you have integrity with your word, that becomes a bit inauthentic to begin to claim a reality that you don't know is settled yet with people from the past. And often those people from the past are connected to each other. So I've been experiencing this a lot this week because I have a Facebook account that is a public account that I only use to share these kind of things and things about, where I'm living and positive things. And suddenly all of these people from the past are resurfacing. And I deleted my private Facebook last summer in order to cut all those tethers sort of at once. And there were a lot of people on there that I've known from all over the world, and there was nothing wrong with those people. And none of them, do I believe, were intentionally tethering me. But I began to understand that in order to leap, in order to jump, in order to skyrocket, it was best to just cut all the ropes at once, to remove as many tethers as I knew and was aware that I could in order to allow myself to ascend. And then in the months following, it became really evident to me where my anchor tethers were, where the people existed that were holding really thick tethers to my balloon, and the sort of one person that was trying to pull me down, and that was a family anchor tether. And I had a lot of false beliefs about the way that that relationship was at peace and the way that it was working. And it was in the midst of the final surrender of a lot of my 3D reality that anchor tether came up and was doing everything it could to pull me back down. And it really hurt me in the moment to experience that, but I did not engage. I did not reply to that. And because I wouldn't fight with that anchor, then that anchor decided that, I guess that I don't exist anymore, and then stopped communicating with me by their own choice, and didn't recognize my birthday, which, in the moment, it feels a little bad. But then you realize that it's the creator of all. It is God. It is, your ascended master, Yeshua, Muhammad, the Buddha, that are protecting you by removing these tethers. And that's another video that I'm going to get into later about the removal. But focusing on the tethers, I want to wrap this up quickly here and just say that removing the tethers to honor yourself is not a dishonor among the tethers. There's nothing wrong with these people. They're not bad people. It's just that to become a new version of yourself, you cannot be tied down to the past. You cannot be tethered to what used to be or the version of you that used to be. So if you have these tethers in your life and you're trying to do some ascension, you're trying to meet your highest self and your higher frequency, it can be really useful to temporarily disengage with your tethers. They say if you let something go and it comes back, it's yours. It's the same idea, that you can communicate with your tethers, your people, your friends, your family, your acquaintances, that you are going to go into isolation, that you're going to go into silent mode, that you are going to focus on yourself. And in doing that, you are going to be out of communication for a while, and that you would appreciate if they would respect your silence, and that you would be back one day. And then as you go through your ascension, these people will either be wiped out of your mind, the removal, which I'll talk about in a different video, or at some point, when you begin to settle into your new reality and into your higher vibration, you will want to engage with them, and not in the old way, but as the new you, and reintroduce yourself to them. And if people really love you, they will accept the new version of you, they will welcome the new version of you, and they will allow you to have changed. Your interaction with them may look a lot like the past, the way they interact with you, but you have the right, and you do need to be able to articulate and tell people, hey, I don't want to go out drinking anymore, or I don't really find this type of engagement fun or funny anymore, but I do think you're a great person, so can we relate in a new way? And this way you can invite people back into your life and back into your new reality, without losing everyone permanently. But my belief is that in order to ascend quickly, in order to ascend to the highest level, it's best to release all these tethers, to release everything tying you to the old version of yourself, so that you can rise and then reintroduce people that you want to have in your life again.